everyone, I'm Jennifer with Newegg TV, and today I have a special guest in the studio. I have Tony Matter from Torco Advanced Lubricants, and he's going to talk to us about some different types of lubrication, both in racing and regular consumer applications. So how are you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing good, Jennifer. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for coming down.
We have a unique product here with Torco. Torco's
Yes.
been around since 1950. It's truly a hardcore racing product. So it's never really been mainstream. You won't find us in Pep Boys or Craigens or the mainstream world. Primarily because we don't build to a price point, we build to a purpose.
Right.
So
Which
most
is
of your
better
mainstream
for engineering.
Right. Yeah, well, we deal in issues where other oils can't handle the issue. So that's kind of where we take over in the lubrication world. Our primary product that kind of gives you a reference point to why Torco is different than everybody else is MPZ. And our engine assembly lube, this is the premier product. We sell this direct to Porsche North America's race division. Most of the top engine builders in Southern California all know of this product. Its biggest contribution, what it's doing is to the metal. So this will stay put. If a motor builder is building a bottom end, he needs to send the top end out for repairs or whatever, this will stay put. It's there. If I put this on your fingers and you want to get rid of it before the next year, you're going to have to find some motor oil because it's only motor oil soluble. That's what liquidates it. So contact cleaner and soap or water or any other product will not remove it.
Let's talk a little bit about the difference between a high-performance engine oil and maybe a brand that you would buy at, somewhere like Pep Boys. What is the primary difference in what happens to that oil as the engine works?
Oil is more about additives than the base stock. I'll never contest that oil isn't oil. If a baker's baking bread, he needs flour. If we're building a tire, we need rubber. So if we're making an oil, we need oil. So just like in bread, you can have different grades of flour. Well, we can have different grades of base stock. Oil tries to survive under heat, load, and speed, which it can't by itself. So every engine oil since the 1950s in a gas-powered production car has had additives to help keep the oil alive. So what the MPZ allows Torco to do differently than anybody else is we work on what's called a secondary boundary lubrication. So as the scraper ring goes down, picks up the oil, brings it up the cylinder, under combustion, it burns that off and you have a dry stroke under the exhaust stroke. What the MPZ does is it leaves a boundary there with the metal. And what that allows for is less friction, less heat, increases horsepower. Oil cannot make horsepower. Oil can only free up horsepower. So what we're doing is allowing the motor to achieve what it was built to do. We don't have perpetual, otherwise you wouldn't be able to turn the engine off. So when we build a new motor, we start with friction, and then we're just finding ways to reduce that friction to allow it to work.
So that keeps the oil from breaking down and burning, but also keeps the engine components from wearing out.
For better wear, correct, right? Because once you have wear, it's over. And to err is human, to forgive is not oil policy. So
you get you need to have a good product that can limit that wear so that you don't have things like shaft play and seals blown and things like that.
Synthetic is, I call synthetic I've got Aaron Rodgers quarterback scenario. Everybody, synthetic has been turned into a marketing buzzword. And a lot of people don't understand that truly full synthetic or fully synthetic oil is more or less these days a code name for synthetic blend. You can truly build an oil with as little as 1% synthetic in it and call it a full synthetic oil or Syntec or synthetic technology in the bottle. It's not telling you how much of that fluid is synthetic.
Right.
So the reason that we would want to use a synthetic over a mineral is for how fast you need those additives to migrate. Okay, it's a faster delivery system. So some older vehicles actually work better with a mineral oil because they were designed on a mineral oil. Newer technology needs that synthetic to migrate faster to get to the top end parts. Oil runs downhill with gravity. On cold start, it has to go all the way up, back up to the top to get to the cam. Okay,
Right.
so how fast do you need those additives to get up to those parts?
Right. So we were talking a little bit about your friend's Volkswagen Bug, and I had a '73 Volkswagen Bug also, and my mom has a '71 Plymouth Duster that they tried to convert over to a synthetic, and it really didn't help the engine at all. And actually, it's the stock 318, and so it actually started dieseling a little bit off that, and then they just put it back on regular oil, and voila!
Voila, it was happy again. Yes, exactly. Because sometimes
I think the average person who doesn't, really give much thought to, what they're putting into their car. Maybe they're a little bit of a DIYer, so they do their own oil change, and they just think that if they do, a synthetic, then they're maybe helping the environment because they're not using a mineral oil. And I think that people feel that like synthetic is a synonym for something that doesn't come from the earth or is recycled in some way, but there are some very significant differences in those things.
We actually have a mineral oil. Then you'll notice here that the SR1 with the red label says 100% synthetic, and the SR5 is a blue label, also says 100% synthetic. The SR1, we do an SR1, an SR1 race, and then we do an SR5 motor oil, and then we do an SR5 race. And we have 4 different price points for those oils, okay? But the red label is what we call a hydrogenated group 3 synthetic.
Okay.
So if we look at the history of synthetic and how we got to synthetic, in World War II, the military aircraft was using PAO, or that is an acronym for polyalpha olefin. And basically what that means is plastic first from oil finished product. So it's already been through a heat cycle. They break it back down into a true synthetic form. Okay, so today if you're any company building a synthetic oil, 95% of what's in the market is not PAO. Okay, so why is that? Well, in the late 70s, mid 70s, thereabouts, AMSOIL with a Z came to market, right? First in synthetic to the automotive marketing world. Okay,
Right.
Followed by Duralube and Slick 50, and a lot of these companies are no longer producing the same product that they wore back in the day, but they're running with the names. So AMSOIL comes into the market, and you could run far longer on your oil change interval just by changing the filter and topping back off, because nothing deals better with heat than PAO. But this is also where the myth came that you can't put synthetic into your motor till it's broken in. Okay, and what the problem was is they had a solvent, and it wasn't compatible with FIPG, which is the sealant on your oil pan, and it would swell the seals, your main seal, and so you would have leaks. And so all the engine builders of the old days were like, oh my God, no, don't put that in my motor, right? Yeah, and that made sense. So it did create, once you have controversy, you will create buzz. So synthetic became a buzz in the 80s, and everybody was hungry for synthetic. Well, Mobil Exxon had control of polyalpha olefin. British Petroleum, all they had was mineral oil. So they started playing with what they had from a crude barrel of oil. So What falls to the bottom of the barrel in the refining process we call a Group 1 mineral. The middle is what we call Group 2, a little cleaner, bright stock. Group 3 was the cream off the top, the best bright stock from the processing of a crude barrel of oil. When they started hydrocracking it, that wasn't enough, but when they introduced hydrogen into it, it broke it up enough that they took Mobil Exxon to court in the mid-90s, and they won. And they had proved that Group 3 resembled a Group 4 polyalpha olefin enough to call it a synthetic. So they came back to everybody that made oil and said, we're no longer calling this oil, this is now synthetic.
Okay.
And all you need to do is use a little bit of this in one or two, and we can call it full synthetic and launch our synthetic line of oils against the more expensive PAO.
Okay.
What they really weren't aware of is that they needed ester to come to the party. Okay, because in an oil in an oil building scenario, all the product fits on one hand. There's Group 1, Group 2, Group 3 is now synthetic, Group 4 is PAO, a synthetic, and then there's ester. Well, when you look at our SR5, SR5 is a mix of PAO and ester. And the ester plays very well with the PAO and allows us to hold a very heavy additive pack in suspension far longer. So this allows this to deal with a lot of heat.
So, and also so you don't get a dry stroke.
Right, well, the additive pack doesn't break down as quick.
Right.
Okay, so in 2006, the oil industry changed dramatically, and they didn't really do a backwards compatibility test on anything. And all the cam companies, you talk to Edelbrock, Iski, Webb, Snyder, pick a cam company, Comp Cams was the biggest, so they got hit the hardest, right? In a solid lifter flat tappet cam application with the new oils, when they went to API-SM, right, it would flatten a solid lifter cam in as little as 3 minutes on a dyno. And so the cam manufacturers were thinking they had a cam issue, but they didn't have a cam issue, it was an oil issue. So the additives there to your left, the ZEP, what that does is it replenishes the additives. And this proves the point that it's all about additives.
Yeah.
Without the additives, you cannot do what you need to do to keep that motor alive. Now that particular, the ZEP is for an older non-CAT vehicle. Okay, high performance application. The next bottle in the center, that is called SR1, or we call it SEP, and that is a CAT 02 friendly. So that puts the additives back into your newer vehicle, where why did we all of a sudden go from zero, from SAE 30? When I was a kid growing up in the 70s, all oil since the Model T was SAE 30, right? Go get me a can of oil. Our only choice was 30.
You have one choice.
Today we've got 020, we've got 520, we've got 030, we've got 530, we got 1550s, we got 1040s. Why is that? Okay, what changed and why is the big question. So when we're looking at building an oil and our assortment of product to build it with, like anything, building a computer or an engine or a loaf of bread, you've got ingredients, and you're going to buy different levels of components, and we're building a bottle of oil. Yes, all right. Okay. Bottom line, this has engineering.
Right.
Castrol Liquid Engineering, their commercial says.
Right.
Okay. They'll start with a thinner base stock and use polymer, or what we call a VI improver, to ascertain the number on the right. So if we're reading a bottle of oil, the way that it should read is 20W by itself. And the W stands for winter grade. A lot of people will think that it stands for weight, but it actually stands for winter grade. SAE 50, this is the actual film strength or the viscosity of the oil that we're trying to maintain for the clearance between the bearings and the crankshaft to give it that nice pillow to ride on. The more horsepower engines and the more load that you're going to put on that, we need more film strength there to keep it alive. So in the old days, we had STP oil treatment, right? So you put your 30 weight oil in your straight 6, and all of a sudden things smoking years down the road, and they say, oh, go get a can of STP oil treatment. Well, STP oil treatment, what it was polymer in a can. So what you were doing was putting polymer and taking that 30 and making it a 40 or a 50 until it got ring seal and it would stop smoking. It was purely just a mask of the problem, okay? So GM Synchromesh transmission oil, what they've done is they've changed the viscosity index of that oil to slow the synchros down. On the farm, you just put hay, right, in the transmission to slow it down so the synchros could mesh, right? In the modern world, well, we use a thicker oil to slow that down. A thinner oil or a synthetic, right, it's going to migrate much faster, so things can't engage, they can't hook up, so a lot of problems will occur in older vehicles on Synchromesh trannies where you go thinking you're doing it a favor by putting synthetic in there and you're not. And now they really can't grab and you're causing more problems and damage than you are needing to.
All right, well thanks for that, Tony. I really think that it's good to inform people about those are very basic, the basic science behind oil. And most people, like you said, think that the W means weight. They don't actually know, like, well, the bigger numbers must mean better, so that's what I'm going to get, and or if they just take it to a oil change shop, they just trust whatever's going in there without really too much investigation. And I think that people now, studies have shown that people are keeping their cars a lot longer and need them to last a lot longer, and so you need to become a little bit more aware of the things that you're putting into your car and what can actually preserve that engine life. But I'd like to move now to more fun stuff.
Okay.
Because you work directly with, I met you at Formula Drift.
Yes.
And you work directly with those types of race car applications. And I come from a world where, kids build race cars in their garages. And so I had never heard of Torco until we met at Formula D, and you talked to me about it and told me, well, actually all of these cars are running this oil and here's why. And I just thought that was fascinating because all of my friends that are DIYers are still shopping at Pep Boys for their oil.
Yes.
And so I think we need to change that because guys, you would get so much more life out of your engines and so much more bang for your buck on those, legal racing things you do.
Yes, yes.
If you learned a little bit more about your oil.
I call it the pay now or pay later.
Pay now or pay later. How many engine swaps do you really want to do in your garage with a floor jack and a dolly?
Yes, and
it's
so
painful.
a lot of the customers that I've earned over the last 4 years, sometimes it would take up to a year for them to see the result and the benefit of changing oil. I kind of put oil right there with religion and politics in some ways. It's like trying to...
You're a good man, Tony.
Yeah.
Get your priorities.
It's like, okay, I get it, you're Catholic, you're not... but yeah, I had a buddy that was, a firm believer in one brand of oil, and I finally got him to put some Torco in his motorcycle, and he took it out for a track day, and he really thought he knew a lot about oil, and for the number of people that I come in contact on a daily basis, he did know a lot about what we've talked about. And when he put the Torco in there, he came back to me and called me on a Sunday afternoon after he got back, literally, and was like, how can I not know about this oil?
Right.
And,
so tell me, what happens in, say, you have a race car that's pushing 800 or 900 horsepower. If they're not using a advanced lubrication, like something like Torco, and they just dump whatever into their engine and then go, beat on it, what are some indicators that things are going wrong and it's the problem is the oil?
We don't really concern ourselves too much with like I say, oil can't make horsepower. It can only free up what's there to do.
Okay.
Okay. So I always get the question of, well, my buddy's got this 800 horsepower, we got 1200 horsepower or whatnot, right? But really what we're talking about all day long is the film strength and what are the clearances first and foremost, right?
Okay.
Because if you put too thick of an oil in there, then you're going to lose performance, okay? If you put a synthetic in where you should be typically using a mineral, is it running on meth alcohol? Are we running nitro or straight alcohol? Our TR1 mineral oil here, this is the heritage of the company.
Okay.
Because this is our line for nitro, meth, and alcohol. And if you look at the history of who Torco was and how they came about, Bob Lancaster was an oil engineer in the 40s for Texaco, and he saw the hydrocracking process come about, which is what we talked about, what they started to use to make synthetic, right? They thought, well, we'll hydrocrack it first, right? Because that made this back in the day work with nitro. Well, he was the only one doing it. He got together with Keith Black Racing Engines, and they pioneered nitro oil with Don Perdome and Connie Coletta and all the old school. All the nitro cars were running a Torco mineral, and that's got a very heavy additive pack in it so that it washes. Well, there's cars that were making 600, 700, 800 horsepower back in the 50s and 60s, right? So this can be used in that application today, right? Even if it's making 800 horsepower. It's what am I interjecting that's going to wash away the additives? Because remember, if you try to break this into just 2 points, right? I need additives, and how fast do I want to get them there? That's what we're doing, okay? So whether it's 3,000 horsepower or whether it's 800 horsepower, the additives have to survive how much heat and load you're putting on it. That's the game. And so if you're using a mainstream product in that application, it has no chance of holding up. Those additives cannot protect. And then if it's not the right base stock to move those additives where they need to go, then you're not getting the additives where they need to be on time, so you're losing twice. So every motor in drift or Bonneville or any form of racing that we've done, we've provided barrels of oil to several race teams as they'll go out as black barrel drums, because in NASCAR and Formula One, the closest thing to say is, okay, it's built similar to an SR5, okay? But nothing in those cars is similar to what you drive, right?
Right.
So they don't have to comply to the SAE scale. If we look at SAE 30, what does that really mean? Well, that's Cinestokes at 100 degrees centigrade. So what we're doing is we're taking a sample of this oil and we're putting it into a controlled temperature environment, and we turn a valve and that oil will come down and fill another flask at the same temperature, and we set a stopwatch at the same time, and then when it fills to the second line up, we stop that and we take it times a known equation. So for anybody to have SAE 30 on the bottle, what it's saying is that it has to be between 9.3 and 12.5 Cinestokes at 100 degrees centigrade. All right? So within that range, you could be at 9.5 and have SAE 30 on the bottle, right?
Okay.
Or you could be at 12.1 and have SAE 30 on the bottle. Now let's say that 9.5 goes into a time attack car and goes to Vegas Speedway in August. And it puts it under severe heat, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It just fell into an SAE 20, and it wasn't enough protection for the motor, and it flashes all 4 barrels, and the ring sees, and your day is over,
You're having
right?
a very bad day.
You're having a bad day. So if
With
we
no air
look at
conditioning.
if we look at why we have different grades, right? We talked that SAE 30 goes all the way back to the Model T, right?
Right.
That's the
That's what
starting.
you had.
Yeah, that was it. When we go to a 40, we're really driven towards turbos. We brought the oil out through the turbo to cool it. Now, granted, there's cases where a BMW and E46 has a self-contained turbo, so it's not even an issue there, right?
Right.
But in a Porsche twin turbo, where you've got lines running that oil out through the turbos, it's introducing it to extra heat.
Right.
So the 40 kind of ensures that you're going to maintain that 30 as an insurance policy.
Right.
When we go to a 50 in modern day stuff, we're looking injected or blown engines, light alcohol applications. When we go full alcohol, we typically look at a 60. And when we go to nitro, we're looking at SAE 70. And now they're looking for a need really for an SAE 80, because now they're starting to pump up to 8 gallons per minute of nitro into them, and it's not enough for the SAE 70. So now we're looking at going as high as an SAE 80. So why do we go 530 and 2050? Well, if you look at the winter grade, we can go 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, and there is a 25, but there is no W30, okay? No 30W, I should say. And the 25 winter grade is a freeze point at approximately 15 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit that oil will pour and not freeze. A 0W is at greater than 60 degrees Fahrenheit below 0 for a non-freezing point.
Yeah, these are things Californians I
don't
don't think
need
about this at all.
Right. So we're playing more to these oils.
I don't know what it means to winterize an engine. We don't have winter in Orange County.
Exactly. So excluding PAO and ester off of that number, when we look at mineral or a hydrogenated group 3 synthetic, we want those numbers closer together. What we call a true Newtonian fluid is a 20W40, meaning no polymer for that spread.
Got it.
Okay, so what you're finding manufacturers doing, creating numbers like 1060, 1550, 5W50, right? Their recommendations, we'll see Honda Motor Corporation come out with a 0W16 next year. And they actually got, as far as I know, it should go through this year or first part of next year before they bring it out, that there will be recognized an SAE 16. Okay. So it will be the very first time in a very long time that we've introduced a new viscosity grade. But today, anything below a 30, or I should say below a 20, right? You can call it pretty much anything you'd like in the manufacturing of that world. So you'll hear people saying, oh, I'm running a 5 weight, or I'm running, but there is no weight, I tell people. Unless you're shipping the oil, there is no weight, right?
Yeah.
You are building to a viscosity.
Right.
And that's how they build oil in NASCAR and in Formula One, is to a specific centistoke, whether it be in the transmission or the motor. And they may change that grade per track, per motor, per gearing, for flow, okay? And you can change performance in a motor. I own 2 cars personally, and the oil caps say to run a 20, and I run 1030 in them both, right? Because I want to protect for wear. What we're doing with a 20 is we're trading wear for miles per gallon. That's what you're doing with a 20. When you go below that SAE 30, it's yin and yang on everything. There's a give and a take. And just like the zinc and the cams, what they did was they had shown studies by Society of Automotive Engineers that by reducing zinc diethylphosphate, miles per gallon automatically went up. By running thinner oil, we also gained miles per gallon. So it was 2 very inexpensive ways in a newer car to gain as MPG to get credits for building gas guzzling SUVs, right? In a manufacturing standpoint.
So this is a good point to transition to the average person, maybe a little bit of a DIYer if you change your own oil, or if you are a garage modifier and you like to do these things. So Torco kind of is taking the science out of oil for you and making it in a way that is very available. And actually, we sell these products on our Newegg automotive marketplace, and You can buy them online, which makes it very available and easy. They are a bit higher price point than what you might find, but as Tony has been explaining to us, you are going to be getting, the trade-off is going to be better wear for your engine, which means your engine will last longer. You will be able to put more strain on it.
Yes.
And also perhaps improve your MPG.
In some cases, we've seen where even switching to a heavier grade in place of a 20, which is designed for MPG, with the MPZ additive in here, it actually maintains the same miles per gallon in the application, but is protecting the vehicle as well instead of losing the wear that
And also these can
was
go
occurring.
longer in between oil changes, right?
You will, because the additive is protecting that base stock, and so typically on the SR1 Race 1030 is my particular favorite. I've had guys run this into Subaru BRZs, Scion FRSs, the Mustang World switched to a 1030. I run it in a Ford Transit Connect that I drive daily. I run it in a 2013 Hyundai Sonata, and I run it for 10,000 miles on an interval, switching the filter at 5,000 and topping back off with 1 quart.
Okay.
So you're looking at about 30% more price point, but you'll get a true 10,000 miles. The oil will still come out of the motor translucent, which you will not see with the other oils out there. When you see, if you see
burnt, and a lot less of it because it evaporates over time.
Right, exactly. Once it wears through that additive pack on there, it can't regenerate the additive, so then the oil starts to break down, and the polymers that are in that, if you're running a 0W or a 5W, you have a lot of polymer, which is basically like a shaved plastic. So that's the black gooey that you're seeing in the oil there.
It's all running through your engine, which is great.
So we can talk about this for.
I'd like to talk about, just really quickly before we wrap it up, a couple of your other fun products that you brought that are available for purchase. This is a high octane accelerator that you can turn 5 gallons of 91 octane into 5 gallons of 105 octane. And we were talking about San Diego. There's a pretty substantial racing scene down there, and you said you sell a lot of this down there because they'll put 91 in their tank, and this will save them while they're sitting in San Diego traffic to get to the track, not burning up race fuel, even though there are a number of stations in San Diego where you can get race fuel off the pump. But at $8 or $9 a gallon. So this will save you money and allow you to just up your octane once you finally get to where you're going
I find
racing.
the best bang for your buck there is really 1 can to 10 gallons.
Allow 10?
Allow it to treat 10 gallons. More is not better. It's CAT and O2 safe, so it can run in anything that you have. What it's using is manganese and isopar C. So it's not just an octane booster, it's what we call a race fuel concentrate.
Race fuel concentrate.
Yes,
sounds like
exactly.
A tasty smoothie.
Exactly. It's taking your pump 91 unleaded and completing it out to work like race gas. Manganese and isopar C are 2 components that you'll find in race gas. The manganese is elevating the octane, and the isopar C is what slows, cools, and gives you that complete burn that you're looking for. This can be used in dyno tuning applications if you're trying to tune to a specific. There's a ratio chart on the can that allows you to make a 93, a 95, a 98. So some of the old school V8s that just can't run on the pump gas that we have today, this will help clean it up. This is the 1 out of 10 gas additives that actually does something, though. It's a very unique product.
And you also brought with you a couple other products, some brake cleaner and other things there. Yeah,
our PL50 is probably the most productive product out of the group for bang for your buck. I mean, it travels with heat real well. It's a very good penetrating lubricant if you're working on older cars trying to extract studs and whatnot. It's better than a WD-40, or it's not a water-based. I call it similar to a Triflow, if you're familiar with that product, but not. It works in bicycle applications and motorcycle applications for cables,
Yeah.
clutch levers. And,
Very cool.
Yeah. The brake cleaner is a high-end brake cleaner, so I mean it's not what you're going to find at your buddy's shop because they use it like water.
Yeah.
They're more apt, but it has a very good propellant in it. Moto prep, this is popular with the speedway guys, motocross guys, putting it under the fenders to keep the mud from sticking to the underside of the fenders.
Great.
It's a silicone product, but that's kind of that in a nutshell. And,
Well, thanks for coming down today, Tony. I really
yeah,
appreciate it
appreciate
again.
the time. And
So again, this is Tony Matter with Torco Advanced Lubricants. You can find all of these lubricants available on our Newegg Marketplace website. And as usual, if you've liked this video or found it helpful, please like it and subscribe to our various YouTube channels so that we can keep doing what we're doing. And until next time, I'm Jennifer, and you've been watching Newegg TV.